Hey guys, what's going on? Shaw here, and today there was an article actually posted on WoWhead that talks about our Covenant choices and very simply lays them all out across the board, which choice is going to be good for the different types of PvE content, respectively, both for Raid and Mythic Plus. Hey, look, here comes a boat. So in case you missed that article by any chance, I'm going to actually have the link in the description below, so you guys can either follow along, or if you have no idea what WoWhead is, you can go check that out there. But I'm going to briefly cover what they talked about in there. These are pros in all of the classes, respectively, from the tanks to healers all the way down to the DPS. And they just talk about what abilities are good. You're going to see some of their thoughts on why certain Covenant abilities are good. And this is the time to start thinking about this stuff, because Shadowlands is right around the corner. We're about 2 to 3 weeks out now, and these choices are pretty real, and Blizzard's really getting down to those fine-tuning knobs that they're adjusting. So we are going to see future builds, so insert your typical kind of dialect here that just says this is still on beta, things can still change, but I want to start talking about it now because you need to be informed of these decisions before you start getting into progression or you start doing Mythic Plus pretty heavily and making the right call up front so you don't get punished later on the road when you have to swap and restart your kind of grinds. We're going to dive right into this build here. So this was it. There's also going to be an ad for Big Lots. If you guys want to check this out, you can apply now for details. Anyways, the article kind of just talks about things can still change. Things are being updated every week. These are the class guide writers. So these guys who really know what they're talking about, they've spent hours and hours and hours testing and doing theory crafting on beta and through simming. So these guys know their shit. So you can kind of read through this. You're able to read all their thoughts as well as see your specific class guide. So if you're new to a class or you're main swapping, or if you just really like to read about your class in general because you've been maining it for years, this is a good place to look. You're going to see some big names here like Tettles, Jack, even like Zyronic. All these guys, everyone here for all the class writers are extremely knowledgeable on their class. As you scroll down, you're going to then see a quick look at the tanks, healers, and the DPS. I'm primarily going to just talk about kind of my general thoughts about the tank scenario here. I'm going to talk a little bit about just Covenant choice in general as well, but this is mainly going to be targeted kind of where the tanks are sitting with their Covenant choices, because I think some of these are accurate, but I kind of want to talk through some disclaimers and whatnot about these choices, at least I guess in my opinion. So a little subjective, but a little objective through my own testing. So something to note is that the Kyrian Covenant choice is obviously extremely predominant right now. You can see it being the best choice for pretty much every tank in the raid, as well as being pretty predominant in the Mythic Plus scene as well, being the best choice for, I guess, 4 of the 6 tanks. Let's focus on just the raid Covenant in general. So why is Kyrian so strong? So this article mentions it, and it's also kind of known to a lot of players who've been testing beta, is that the reason this is good is not necessarily because the Kyrian ability is good for every single tank, or it's maybe like overtuned, which could be maybe a common misconception about this graph here, or this, I guess, like sheet or article. So the biggest thing why this Soulbind is going to be really good is not because of the ability, but because of the Soulbind tree that you have access to. As soon as you pick Kyrian, you're going to have access to Pelagos. Pelagos is one of your Soulbinds, and his tree actually is going to give you a flat versatility buff. And this buff is going to last for 10 seconds, and it's going to stack up to 5 times, giving you 1% of versatility per stack, up to 5, obviously. Essentially, the best way I can describe this is it's going to work like Conflict and Strife. So pretty much while you're in combat, it's going to have 100% uptime, as long as you're casting spells that are different than the spell you've been casting. So it's pretty much like a hit combo mixed with Conflict and Strife. The thing about this is you don't lose it by casting the same spell. So you have 10 seconds to cast a different spell than you just casted. This is pretty easy for most classes to do because most classes have a rotation. And because of this 5% increased versatility is a 5% damage buff and healing buff, as well as a 0.5% for damage reduction. So it's a 2.5 damage reduction baseline. This is really big because it obviously increases your overall damage period. Despite the Covenant ability maybe being weaker, maybe for like damage or healing or whatever the utility it might bring, but it's going to have a positive outcome when it comes to doing more damage to kill a raid boss or more healing to kill a raid boss. So something I'm going to talk about as well, if you look at most choices down the board, Kyrian is either going to be really good for raid or really good for Mythic Plus, or both, just because all of the other options are so undertuned or not well tuned that having just a flat 5% damage increase is like better. I think Shadow Priest is one of those specs where they're like, the Kyrian ability sucks, but 5% increased damage is so much better than all the other abilities. And you're going to see this across most healers, DPS, and tanks. So what they've done, if you haven't been keeping up, what Blizzard has done is instead of trying to balance the covenants at this really, like making them a really cool ability that's pretty impactful to your rotation or an impactful cooldown, they've just kept nerfing it over and over again. So now the Soulbind tree is going to be kind of more important, or the conduits that you're going to put into your Soulbind tree are more important. And by doing this, they've made it pretty much like pick the best Soulbind tree. And quite frankly, right now, Pelagos is the option that's going to give you that verse. Unless they make it like across all trees, you're able to get kind of the same buffs, which will make this really boring if they did that to try to balance it. Kyrian is going to be the primary choice for most raid progression players. I do want to talk that there are some choices that it's not just because you pick Pelagos and like you pick that Soulbind because of the versatility, but there's also some covenants that just have really cool impactful abilities tied to that covenant. I just did a video about Vengeance Demon Hunter and why they're looking so strong in Mythic Plus, mainly because of their Elysian Decree that they get by choosing Kyrian. So it's just an added bonus to it. Same with Protection Paladin in Mythic Plus. Going Kyrian gives you Divine Toll, which is just insane. You chuck out 5 Avenger Shields at 5 random targets, and it just gives you a shitload of holy power, and it just makes it so you're doing a lot of damage with your legendary, which is awesome. So those two tanks kind of fall in line. We've kind of expected. But even with those being good in Mythic Plus or in Raid or in both scenarios, doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be the best choice for the other tanks. Now, you have to keep in mind that your Covenant choice is going to have him be impactful elsewhere. Is the 5% increased versatility going to make or break your like standings in your guild? Meaning like if you're racing to get Hall of Fame or you're racing for World First, you're just trying to get AOTC, is Kyrian going to make that easier? A little bit, but this isn't going to be crazy impactful for most raiders. So at the end of the day, you are going to be able to pick a covenant that fits more what you want to do. So for example, I plan on playing Guardian Druid. There's no way in hell I plan on picking Kyrian. There's just no way. It just has a weird interaction. It really doesn't benefit the actual Guardian Druid. It doesn't really add anything to the rotation outside of having like an additional DR/damage amplifier, which has been nerfed anyways. And I don't think 5% versus something that I'm going to like lose my shit over. So I would rather pick something that's going to make it feel better to play that kind of content that I plan on doing outside of raiding. Because while I do plan on raiding, I do plan on doing other content like Mythic Plus. So when you're looking at this, please take it with a grain of salt that while it does say it's going to be the best covenant, it's simply because you're going to have a little bit more damage and you're going to take a little less damage. But oftentimes those flavor choices might be really good for a specific fight. So Kyrian might be good baseline, but the Necrolord choice might be really good for encounter 2, 3, and 8. I just made up those numbers. I don't know if that's actually going to be true, but you have to keep that in mind when looking at this chart. So how do I feel about this as in displaying information? So it goes to show that right now there is an issue with the covenant choice not really mattering or not really having a lot of control over it, because if Kyrian is the obvious choice for literally 5 of the 6 tanks, despite even Protection Paladins can probably take Kyrian as this because the verse is going to be good. The Venthyr ability that you get, Ascent Hollow with Venthyr, despite it even being really good, Kyrian will probably still be viable too, especially because they just buffed the conduit for the Kyrian ability Divine Toll. It just means that the Covenant system is not balanced, nor it's well designed if this is going to be the best choice for every single fucking class. While it falls off a little bit with healers, only Holy Paladin and Holy Priest wanting probably Kyrian as their best choice, a lot of the DPS also want Kyrian as either their, I guess, AoE build or their single target build. And this just does not feel good, and it feels like poor design on Blizzard's part. And I think they need to fix the balancing of the Soulbind trees. I don't know if that means to nerf the trees' value, or at least Pelagos' value, or if that means buff the other trees, or maybe make so you can choose Soulbinds across like different covenants. I don't know what the answer would be to that, but they need to fix something, because when Kyrian is the predominant choice for over 50% of the different specializations, there's an issue. So I just wanted to kind of remind you guys that while looking at this, it might seem like there is going to be an obvious choice. This isn't going to make or break your character's performance in a raid. It's going to fall down to what kind of content that you want to do, and just keeping in mind kind of the aesthetic option to choose your covenant and what that's going to mean for your character as a whole. So I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. This article, again, like I said, will be in the description below. Check it out. It does talk a little bit what I talked about here. You're also able to see the thoughts of. So like, for example, Guardian Druid, if we open this up in a new tab, you'll be able to see the thoughts on why. So like for Raid, Necrolord is good because Adaptive Swarm is good and it has good synergy with Moonfire and Thrash, which is something I talked about in a video a little while ago. And for Mythic Plus, they're talking about how Necrolord, Venthyr, and Kyrian are good. Now, I have separate thoughts on this. I don't think Necrolord is going to be a good choice. I think he's trying to say, like, if you choose it for raid progression, it's going to do fine in Mythic Plus. Anyone who I think is pushing Mythic Plus a little bit more seriously is going to probably not want to go Necrolord, because he's saying, like, you want to pull 10 plus mobs, and if you're doing one pull at a time, Necrolord will be more DPS. More often than not, you're not doing one pull at a time, especially if you're pushing keys. You're trying to, like, create good pulls and good groups and use, like, you want to pull that cater to cooldowns. So Ravenous Frenzy will probably perform better. And I don't like Kyrian defensively, sure, but like I don't think Pumps is a great player, but I don't think his background is in Mythic Plus, so I think this is a little misleading. But I'll talk about that in a different video. I don't want to make this video too long. Again, I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts. Read through this. Let me know. Let me know what you guys think of the options, the people who have tested some of these different covenants. For example, I haven't tested Brewmaster Necrolord actually with the Bone Dust Brew. I've heard it's really good. They give a good explanation here about it and why it's going to be good for Mythic Plus. So I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Let me know in the comment section below. If you did enjoy this video, hit that sub button. It means a lot to me, and it lets me know to keep doing content like this, to keep you guys well informed and just to kind of share thoughts. So I will catch you all in the next one. Have a good night. Take care.